There is a reward for going through difficulties with a good attitude. We would be grateful if God just brought us back to where we were. But when you go through challenges in an attitude of faith, with your head held high, knowing that God is fighting your battles, then a reward is coming. You're not going to just come out, you're going to come out better than you were before. Back in the 1950s, my father had been pastoring a church for many years. It had grown and become very successful. They had just built a beautiful new sanctuary, and he was on the state board for his denomination. His future looked very bright. Then my sister Lisa was born with something like cerebral palsy. The doctors told my parents that she'd probably never be able to walk or to feed herself. My father went to a hotel downtown to be alone for a few days to study the scriptures in a new way. He had been taught that God healed people back in the Bible, but that had passed away. Then he read the scripture, Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. He realized there never was a day of miracles, but there's a God of miracles, and he's still alive. He went back to his church with this new message of faith and victory, healing, abundance. He thought everybody would be excited, but it was just the opposite. It didn't fit into their tradition. There was so much opposition, he ended up having to leave the church. He was devastated. He had spent years pouring his heart and soul into those people. My mother was 26 years old at the time. She had lifelong friends that never spoke to her again. But instead of sitting around bitter, frustrated over what didn't work out, my parents went out and started Lakewood. They found an old feed store, had holes in the floor and cracks in the walls. They cleaned it up, and 90 people showed up the first Sunday. Here my father went from the big prestigious church with a beautiful new auditorium to this little rundown wood building with a fraction of the people. Year after year, he kept being his best, pouring his heart into them, not listening to the critics and naysayers. The opposition said Lakewood would never last, that my father was wasting his time. But when you go through much suffering, God gives you a promise that greater honor is coming, greater favor, greater influence. Against all odds, my sister Lisa began to get better and better. Today she's perfectly normal, 87 years old, doing fine. 1972, Lakewood began to grow. People started coming from all over the city. It kept growing and growing, and here we are 61 years later, still going strong. But we all have unfair things that happen. People that come against us, rejection, betrayals, sicknesses. It's tempting to get discouraged. God, why did this happen? Why did these people push me out? Why was my daughter born with this illness? But some things we're never going to understand. Don't try to figure out all the whys of life. All that's going to do is frustrate you. The good news is God knows how to work all things for your good. It may not be good, but he knows how to turn it for good. The key is to go through the suffering with the right attitude, knowing that greater is coming.